Welcome, dear students, to this introductory class on the play Molly James by Sheila Walsh. Before going to the play, let's see what influenced Sheila Walsh to write this play, Molly and James. She was influenced by the character Molly Bloom of the novel Ulysses by James Joyce. James Joyce was an Irish novelist and poet who is considered to be one of the most influential writers in the modernist avant-garde movement of the early 20th century. He is one of the great masters of stream of consciousness writing. His major works include Dubliners, a short story collection, novels like A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, Ulysses, Finnegan's Wake, a play Exiles, and a few collection of poems. Coming to the features of his works, most of his works are set in Ireland, especially Dublin. The play Molly and James is also set in Dublin. He rebelled against the Catholic Church, is called the Rebel of Rebels. He explored from different points of view simultaneously and focused on the inner world of the characters. Coming to Ulysses, the novel, which was published in 1922, is modeled after Homer's Odyssey. The novel takes place in a single day, 16th June 1904. It consists of 18 chapters and covers an hour of the day. The major themes that runs across this novel are search for identity, search for father and son, theme of exile, quest, journey, and so on. The narrative techniques used by James Joyce are Mythical Method and the method of stream of consciousness. The Mythical Method is a way of juxtaposing depressing and unsatisfying present and the heroic and glorious past. The ordinary present appears even more static and claustrophobic in comparison with the mythical past. The stream of consciousness method, on the contrary, it's about our thought process. It's a technique which was pioneered by Dorothy Richardson, Virginia Woolf, and James Joyce himself. It is characterized by a flow of thoughts and images which may not always appear to have a coherent structure or chronology. And we find the characters' mental processes in which sense perceptions mingle with conscious and half-conscious thoughts, memories, expectations, feelings, and random associations. So that is what we find in this novel, Ulysses. Not only in this, in Portrait of a Young Man as an artist as a young man, in most of his novels we find this method of a stream of consciousness being used. Coming to the main characters of this novel, Ulysses, the main protagonist is Leopold Bloom, who is modeled after Ulysses from Odyssey. Ulysses is a hero who passes from an adventure to another before coming back home after 20 years in Homer's Odyssey. In contrast to this Ulysses, we have Leopold Bloom in this novel as an anti-hero who travels through Dublin in one day, showing his limits and fears. That is how the mythical method, how James Joyce used this mythical method to contrast this ideal king Ulysses, ideal hero or an ideal person Ulysses, to Leopold Bloom, who is aware of his limits and fears. Then we find Stephen Dedalus, who is the adopted son of Leopold Bloom, who is modeled after Telemachus, the young Ulysses' son, who suffers from his father's absence and for the presence of mother's suitors. He looks after the kingdom in the absence of his father. Stephen Dedalus, on the contrary, meets this Leopold in his wanderings, and he himself is unsure of his identity. He is in a search of spiritual values and rejects everything. Both the father and son are in a quest for something. And another character who appears very passive in this novel is Molly Bloom, who is modeled after the faithful wife of Ulysses, Penelope. She rejected all the suitors and waited faithfully for her husband Ulysses, who is in a faraway land. On the contrary, the Molly that is represented in Ulysses, the novel, is a sensual singer who is aware of her sexuality and betrays her husband with her music director. And this play ends with Molly's monologue, an uninterrupted flow of ideas, memories, sensations. It is written in 8 huge unpunctuated paragraphs. It is an expression of Molly's needs and desires, even sexual, typical of the new, more liberated female figure of the society of the time. It is the highest example of the interior monologue in English literature. The play Molly and James is actually a subversive reworking of this concluding monologue in Ulysses from a woman's point of view. There are several other references also that is made in the play, and references of the novel that is made in the play. The play is a fictional account of James Joyce's encounter with his memorable character Molly Bloom in her bedroom. We find that is a setting, the bedroom of Molly James, and the main characters in the play are James Joyce, the author himself, and Molly Bloom, the character whom he has created for the novel Ulysses. In the play, James Joyce comes to Molly Bloom's bedroom to plead a case. He wants to use Molly as a character in Ulysses. So this play is written as if, it is written before the novel Ulysses, and James Joyce is planning to write a novel, and he wants Molly Bloom as a character. In Ulysses, he needs her cooperation. She refuses, but later on she agrees for 10% of his royalties. As the play ends, she is dictating the stream of consciousness monologue that ends Ulysses. So this is something that you need to know before reading the play. So you need to know about James Joyce, Ulysses, and then this play, and especially Molly Bloom, who is a very passive character in Ulysses, but achieves flesh and blood in Sheila Walsh's play, Molly and James. So we'll get to know things from a woman's perspective in the play. So the characters in the play, Molly Bloom was in her early 30s, Irish, healthy, and good looking. James Joyce, 30, Irish, slender. And about the setting, it's a bedroom of Molly Bloom in Dublin, Ireland. It seems as if the flowers are everywhere. There is this beautiful description of the room, or the flowers on the wallpaper, the flowered bedspread, fresh flowers on the table, and the curtains. We get a beautiful description of the setting. Please turn to page 128. And at the curtain, we get to know it's a hot evening in August 1912. The light from the window is catching that very moment. Day slips into night. The door opens. A man's face pops in. It's James Joyce. He closes the door gently, crosses to the vanity and examines the jars of creams. He writes in his notebook as he roams the room. As he crosses to the washstand to feel the water, we hear Molly's vibrant voice. And James Joyce panics and crawls under the bed. So when the play opens, we find James Joyce examining Molly Bloom's bedroom. He is with a notebook and notes down what he sees in the bedroom. He roams around. He wants to get the real Molly Bloom, the image of the real Molly Bloom, the things that she uses and her way of life, her manners and so on. And then we hear Molly's voice. Molly says, "I have enough to do. I can keep myself occupied. Just try not to lose. Bad luck, ours, toodle-doo, bye-bye. What good do you do to me when you are here? Bye." So, we assume that she is, we just hear her voice as the play opens. She is bidding goodbye to someone, and we get to know later on that it is Leopold Bloom who is leaving the house, maybe for some other engagement. But right from the beginning, we find that Molly Bloom is not really happy with this Leopold Bloom, and she says, it doesn't make any difference if you are here. What good do you do to me when you are here? Nothing. So it's better that you go, and I don't mind. She's okay with it. Sting up the place with your smelly tobacco. So that is what he does. He smokes and hide behind papers with your big thoughts, and you keep reading your books and papers. So that is what he does. And Molly Bloom is worried or is irritated and annoyed by the fact that Bloom doesn't give much attention to her. Bloom is preoccupied with his own thoughts and his own beliefs and so on. She pulls the curtain closed, crosses to the bed and flops down into it. Damn, not fair. It's not fair. She moves from the bed and takes off her blouse and flings it onto the chair. No need to get at a loss. By no means found with himself around. Being wed to a man is like living a half-baked life, if you ask me. So now we get to know about her vision of marriage. She is desperate. She is not happy with her husband and says, it is like living a half-baked life, if you ask me. Half-baked thing is not good for eating. Nobody appreciates that. So she says, her life has turned to something like that. Well, it's not fair. Him free to go, me stuck the prisoner here. Look at the lines. So this is something that is troubling here. So like other works that we have seen in this anthology, Breaking the Silence, here again Sheila Walsh through Molly Bloom suggests that men are free to move around, but women are confined to the four walls of the house. And she says, it's not fair that I am stuck here like a prisoner. And she looks at the mirror. Look at the lines, the wrinkles. Now come, Molly, not nearly as bad as most. You have been blessed with looks. She says herself, though she's in her early 30s, she is not, she doesn't look that old. There are no less wrinkles. And she is blessed with good looks. Fine lot, he notices. Might as well be married to a blind man. So she's not admired, her beauty, her body is not admired, and she says it is as if she's married to a blind man. Wonder what that would be like. She closes her eyes and fumbles with the jars on the table. Keen sense of touch, I bet. She opens a jar and creams her neck. Sure, this is considered a sin. All the good feels are sins. So now we find again Molly James referring to something else. She says, I use these creams to feel good. And then she moves on to say, the society always denies this feeling of these good feels to a woman and are considered as sins. But which sin doesn't cost much? No real abuse there, does no one harm. So these things, feeling good, it doesn't actually harm anyone. It doesn't cost anyone anything. No one even knows. So which one? I've got it. The sin of pride, the big one, made the angels fall. So they say, well, what would they have me to do? Walk around oblivious to my obvious advantages? She is sure of her sexual prowess, and she says, should I move around oblivious about it? Not my fault. I was given more than most. So she's endowed with good body, beautiful sensual body, and she says, that is not my fault if I am blessed with that. False in a barbaric law, saying, I am not to share with none other than my husband. So she is against the religion. She talks about how religion dictates certain laws, saying that you should share your body only with one person, that is your husband. She creams her arms. Well, what if the husband long ago lost that desire to be with his wife, to be with Molly Bloom, and if he can't cater to her sexual needs, so what should I do? That is what she asks. Abandoned to the higher cause of morals and politics. So we find the image of Leopold Bloom from Molly Bloom's words. She says, this man, Leopold Bloom, he's philosophical, cynical, and has left and do not feel anything, is not sensual, and he is concerned with the morals and politics. But on the contrary, Molly Bloom says these are all lame excuses, if you ask me, for them that no longer get it up. She says men who doesn't want to have a relationship with a woman, or who's incapable of, they take rescue in these morals and politics, lack of the imagination. That is what it takes after the first few times. You need to have some sort of imagination to have a very sensual and life, according to Molly Bloom. And she creams her breast. What's a higher cause than pleasure? Answer me. Should have been a priest. The Lord, he cares for these. So her husband, he should have been a priest, she says, and him telling me my point of view don't count. So again we find a male chauvinist, a typical male chauvinist person, this Leopold Bloom, who couldn't accept the viewpoints, the perspective of his wife. She senses something, pauses for a moment, decides there is nothing, continues her craving. Himself saying pleasure's minor pursuit. So pleasure, these are pleasures, especially sexual, they are a minor. Proof, pleasure doesn't last. Well, what does? But the sea, sky, the things of nature. That's the really tragedy. All of my wonder won't last. And him so dumb it goes to waste in the here and now. You want your social injustice to rant and rave about? Well, this one for you. The waste of me. She examines her face. She thinks that her beauty and her life is wasted on this person who doesn't appreciate her, who doesn't cater to her needs, who doesn't admire her. Wonder what pack of lies I'll be telling the face when I am 60. Go on, girl, you are not really as shriveled as the rest of them. Convinced there is someone in the room, she puts on her night shawl and picks up the mirror. Good thing Sally plans on visiting me any moment with that big lug of her husband Gerald. He could have been a professional boxer with those hands of his. No, unlike a typical Catholic woman, she is fantasizing about her friend's husband and admires him, admires his physique. She opens the door, then pulls up the bed covers. All right, you whistle, crawl from under. So she found out that somebody is hiding underneath the bed. and she finds James Joyce there, and he says he can explain, and we find find a conversation between James Joyce and Molly, and finally James Joyce apologize for coming or hiding under the bed and frightening Molly. Molly says, "You think it is helpful trespassing and scaring a woman, do you? You think it's fit amusement? What will you sit with your mates playing the funny one, ha-haing into the night? Well, I am no man's jock, mind you." So Molly Bloom gets angry, but James Joyce says, he can explain, and there is something that she wants to find out. He says, "You are absolutely right. Please keep the bottle." He has brought a bottle of whiskey with them. "I apologize for my lack of consideration. How foolish to think I could slip under your bed and actually be welcomed. It sounds ridiculous even to me. My truth is, I was driven to know you." So now we find why he wants to meet Molly James. He wanted to know him. Molly James says, "Are you from an asylum? What is it?" And then James Joyce says, that he's a writer, and he wants to write something about this, but initially Molly James is not ready to hear anything. "I don't slam it. What are you saying?" and all those stuff. And James Joyce says, "I want to write you so that your beauty will be chiseled and preserved for eternity." And Molly is not that, though she wants men to admire her, she's not carried away, or she's not disturbed, she's not moved when James Joyce says that he wants to write something about her. And then Molly asks, "Why not another woman? Why do you want me to write?" And she says, "Why should you? It wouldn't help you any. Why should you see it any other way but your own?" So James Joyce says, "Are you suggesting that I want to profit from you?" "What else? I don't know you. So if you want to write something about me, then the real reason is you want to make some profit out of you." So we find Molly Bloom very plain and sure of what she is saying. "If I weren't the type of woman I am, do you know what a fright hiding under the bed could bring? So I am brave enough, so I am not that scared. What do you think? Now, if that's not using me for your own ends, what is it? So if you are not going to make profit by making me a character, what else?" So good question, James Joyce replies. "Molly, stop telling me that. You should give an answer." Then James Joyce moves on, talks about something else, ask different questions to Molly James. Then finally she is appeased and says, "You are excused. It's no fun drinking alone. You still want that we drink? So if you be so kind," and both of them sit together for this drink. And James Joyce then asks a question, "Would you sing for me?" "Go on with yourself. I am no nightingale for strangers." Molly James then, but finally she says, they starts drinking meanwhile, and Molly says, "Once I got 100 roses, wild, picked from the woods, not store-bought, but roses nonetheless." She closes the door. "Yes, from a boy of 19. So she started talking about, or she shares certain memorable events that happen, memorable events in her life. James says, "I would be honored if you would sing." And this Molly says, "This boy of 19 who brought 100 roses heard me sing. He watched me sing, and he gave me roses." Molly James says, "You think because we share this drink all is forgiven? You have still to tell the nature of your visit, the real reason that you are here." It really is a howl, come to think of it. Hiding under the bed. Grand whiskey we are drinking, of course. James Joyce says, I'm so pleased you are enjoying it. See, I have an idea for a book. Then that is the real reason. For heaven's sake, make me feel like a crone with that Mrs. Because initially she's referred to as Mrs. Bloom. James Joyce, thank you, Molly. You are an old combination. Courage to hide under my bed, and the other side filled with apologies. For a man, that is. So go on about the book. James Joyce then talks about it. Meanwhile, Molly sings for a while, and James Joyce says it's lovely, and Molly says 100,000 welcomes to your mind, your body, to your soul. They drink, and then Molly says, you open your mouth and say your truth. What is the book that you are planning to write? James Joyce says, yes, my book. There will be a part in my book. How do I explain? Then Molly says, I am not dumber. You can talk to me like you talk to anyone. So don't think that it is because I am a woman, you cannot share about your book, and don't think that I won't understand these things. I am not dumb. You don't have to change your talk for me. You can talk as if you talk to your friends, your friends who are writers, male friends. I can understand. I am listening, James. Yes, indeed. I want to write about a woman like you. Like me? There are no like me's. No, I am me. So right, I stand corrected. I want to write about you. For what purpose need you come to my bedroom? The purpose of accuracy. He wanted accurate details of Molly James. Close your eyes then. Describe the room. What objects do you recall? Then James Joyce closes his eyes and describes her room. And she is pretty much impressed with that and says, your mouth really runs on, does it, James? But you have got the gift of observation. That is clear. Well, why not Carmel, the real beauty down the road? Why not hide in her bedroom, right of her? So now she asks a very pertinent question and says, why don't you write about another woman, this Carmel, for instance, a beautiful one who lives nearby? Why don't you write about her? She wouldn't do for my story. If she wouldn't, and you know I would, you must know me. If you know me, why hide under my bed? Answer me that. So you know something about me, and there is something that you like about me, or think that if something is written about such a woman, you will be able to make more profit. So that is why you are here. She is very plain about all these things. And then she says, no need to get on your high and mighty. I was asking out of courtesy. James Joyce then says, forgive me. Then actually he wants to know something more about her. Then again Molly asks, why of writing me? You can paint the whole room from your mind and not remember a second ago sentence. Why me and not Carmel was the topic. Because James Joyce refused to give a correct answer to that question. Yes, until I saw you, you were in my imagination, like what it must feel like to have a baby in the womb, felt alive, yet not known. I understand. I know that mysterious feeling of the womb. Once alive, your way of expressing yourself suits me fine. So follow. I thank you not to tell me what I am to do, and just because you have got a clever grin doesn't mean you have won me. James, my days of being won by a merely grin are long gone. James Joyce then repeats, it was as if out of nowhere you appeared. I was approximately 20 feet away that first time. Here we are, August 12th of August, St. Clare's feast day. She's a patron saint of sore eyes. So what did you say? A reference to James Joyce's eyesight. Woman, medium height. So we find James Joyce describing the first encounter that he had with Molly. The first time that he met Molly, describes all those things and talks about how he found out the address, that it was from the butcher nearby that he got the address. So that is the conversation that we find after this. And then coming to the page number 136, towards the end, we find that it was Mr. Buckley who has given the address, and Molly says he's a good one, not all foaming at the mite and drooling like Tim Fishmonger, that one. Nothing more pleasurable than spreading some hard luck about another. People are that way, all kinds of ways, people. So what tall tale did you tell, Mr. Buckley? And what did you tell to get the address? And James Joyce said, I decided the most appropriate way was to suggest I needed to return something. And that is how he got the address. And I started passing your home and saw you inside in the garden, and he was noting down things. And Molly says, for an instant, wasn't like you changed my whole life. I didn't think anything of you. Knew there was a group over from America. The cut of your coat told me you were a stranger. I've been living abroad. Have you been to Paris? I have. Is it true the women drive automobiles there? Some. Lovely. Do you have any those picture postcards? The ones that show the women off? No, I don't. I have seen them though. So we find both of them engaged in a conversation, and Molly James is interested in female women empowerment, and and she herself is troubled by the fact that she is confined and she is not given this freedom of movement, and how women couldn't drink in public or flirt as they please, drive automobiles. But James Joyce says, yes, he has seen that in Paris, and in Ireland it is not that common during those days. Molly Grant, isn't that grand? Then Ireland can't be far behind. So if that happened in Paris, in course of time, it will happen in Ireland as well. Your talk, why even your laughter has a ring to it. I am born from here. I have returned to publish a book. So I'm Irish. I have returned to publish a book. Well wishes with your ventures. Thank you. Now do you understand why I came here to your bedroom? I needed to hear you speak. I wondered how you spoke, your thoughts, and so on. I do have a way with my words. With words, all right. Least I think so. And I've been told by more than a few. Bloom, the husband, doesn't like the flu. He doesn't want like to hear me talk. Him and his world of men's mutterings. You might find him a curious sort, being such a curious sort yourself. What's his first name? Leopold, that is Leo, Leo. You being a writer must know how to spell. The sound of my words not educated enough for his grand ears. Isn't it a sorrow, a pity, a lament? So many marry the very person who doesn't like the sound of their words. So we find Molly being desperate. She's not happy how Leopold treats her, and says it's a pity that her voice is not soothing or acceptable by him. A real sorrow, James Joyce says. What do you know of sorrow? You a man? I am not so easily won, Mr. Writer. Don't think your needs become my needs. I have served well enough the needs of others. I have been a wife and a mother. Why would I want you to write of me? For why? What need have I? To hear your song sung. So I want your beauty to be made eternal. I want your song to be sung through these writings. It's your song they will be hearing, not mine. So we find Molly very practical here and says, it's not my song that people will be hearing from your book. It is your version of the story. You will take what you can. You will delete something. You will reshape. You will distort. reshape whatever idea your head has of me. I hear already my words. You will bend, twist, force till they come out the rhythm of Mr. Joyce, not the rhythm of mine. So she says, it is your rhythm, your voice, your perspective that would be expressed in the book, not mine. You have the very right to suspect me. You smell like a priest. Anyone ever tell you that? No. All you men of creative bent distort us. Once a fellow painted me, wrote an end. When I accused him of missing me in this picture, he claimed he was doing an impression. Well, what did he need me sitting under the sun for hours and days, boiling the head like a turnip, if it wasn't me, only the impression he needed? So similarly, Mollis says, when you write a book about me, you will be writing and you will be making an impression of myself. You are not presenting me. You are not representing me like the picture, like the portrait. James says, that's precisely why I came. I want to write you as you are, not as I think you might be. You feel this brief visit on this one summer evening will tell you who I am, why, what kind of woman do you take me for. Even the moon changes from night to night, and I'm trying to capture the very breath of you. Molly, even the breath of me changes. Why the sad face, Mr. Joyce? James, I'm caught in your web. Wanting you and only you, and I'm afraid I won't get you. Molly, for your writings, you want me. James, yes, of course. Why else? I'm a little too beneath your starched shirt. What? Forget it. You priest-smelling men are all the same. You don't know the nature of joy. So you have come to me. Yes, Molly, for it's joy I know about, not paper-thin feelings like pleasant, nice, comfortable. Angels sing about it. Such a rare thing, this joy I know about. And why should I tell of such joy to you? Why? What's in it for me? So now she comes to the point. What is in it for me? Or what profit that I can make if I tell you? Didn't I overhear your sadness that your beauty won't last? Let me write your story, Molly. Your wonders will last for as long as men read. Your beauty, your body, everything would be made eternal. Molly says, you are full of your importance as a writer. What good is going to do me? Some reader I will never know of will read about me. What good when I am dead and gone if I am appreciated by some readers? I am telling you, you will never go. I'll count the strands of hair on your head and write of them one by one. And as long as the sea, as long as the sky, that's how long you will be, Molly. Molly, you are offering me a dribble. Dublin is full with women who would want me to write of them. So we find James Joyce arrogant and full of importance of himself and says, we find many women in Dublin who wanted to write about me, but I chose you, but you want me. Isn't it that so, Mr. Joyce? Yes, I want you. All the compliments in my life, and believe me, James, there's been plenty. All the compliments got me nowhere. Vain idolatry is not enough. Some of the same things have to be gained by me as you will gain, such as money. Molly Blooms comes to the point and says, it's money. You will gain money out of it. So I need to have some share, a share of that money. I don't just want compliments from some person from far away. James Joyce is so annoyed and surprised and says that's and taken aback. That's impossible. No, it's not, Molly says. You are turning this act of poetry into a business venture. So James Joyce then, we find him typical of men who thinks that women will just is happy with compliments and won't ask for money or profit, is not practical. Molly, that's correct. How about another taste? She pours herself a drink. I don't know what to say. I wasn't expecting this. I thought possibly you might not want me to write of you, but it's not money that moves me to write. It's truth, art, creativity. And Molly says, your needs are not mine. And Molly says, don't waste your wind. My mind won't change. If you can share the profit, then it's fine. Otherwise, you can just leave. I don't know if the book will sell. I'm a poor man. I will take a promissory note with me in it. It's bound to sell. And with me, if I am represented, it's bound to sell. Don't worry about that. What makes you think a promissory note signed by me would hold up? Then again, Molly says, Mr. Buckley the butcher, a very close friend of mine, I am writing here. How you are the same man who inquired of him about me. Tomorrow I will have him witness and sign it. It will hold up. Mr. Buckley's cousin, another dear close friend of mine, he too. James, how can such a pretty woman even think this way? So James Joyce is very surprised that this beautiful woman, a sensual woman, will think about such practical things. Let me tell you, James, when pretty is your currency, you take precautions for pretty lips. I find this whole discussion not conducive for writing. You are not writing now. You are discussing a few minor alterations to enable you to write. I am known as a fair man, a virtue of mine also, fairness. What do you consider fair? What part of the book do you think I will comprise? Offhand, I would say less than 10%. Molly, then that's my worth, 10%. Book would be better with more of me in it. 10% of what? Of every amount you make on the book, I'd get 10%. No, I find that exorbitant, greedy, unladylike. So that is what troubles him. It is unbecoming of a woman to ask for profit, ask for money, to claim her identity, claim her existence. James, it is unbefitting this bargaining from you. It has no place in my book on this woman of pleasure, woman who is preoccupied with sensual pleasures. How can you be that practical? It is exorbitant. It is unladylike. Molly, and how am I to purchase my pleasures? They are getting more and more expensive every day. My pleasures, the creams, the things that I use, to make me feel good. They are expensive. I can't believe I was so wrong about you. What a regrettable end. Molly, now no need to break your heart, Jamie boy. Should I go out through the back door? James says. Molly, walk out through the front door. Give them something to talk about coming home from mass. So people who are coming home from the mass will see James Joyce coming out. So let them have something to talk about. Excuse me. James says, it was a pleasure meeting you. That's what they have all said. What a sad squash of a man, but he gives grand whiskey. But James Joyce re-enters. I was thinking, Molly, 10% seems fair. Ah, good, I am happy. James, you are? Yes, see, I have always a superstition. Someone would write my story as well as another. Sit at the table. We'll have to work fast before Bloom comes home. You are to write. No living to your mind to remember. I want none of your impressions. James says, as you wish. If you distort, I am warning you, James. I promise I will tell it your way. Good. That's good, lad. Another? Not while I am writing. And she starts narrating. I have always had like the little extra something to drink when I wander into the territory the church warns against that is the sexual pleasures that she talks about. What territory be that, Molly? Molly replies, where a man and a woman find pleasure in one another. And she moves forward with the monologue that ends Ulysses the novel. I want all of you to read this play once again and make a character sketch of Molly. Compare her with Molly Bloom in Ulysses. Thank you.